This really unique workbench has given me so much more space in the shop and has greatly improved my workflow. I've cut all 4 of my tabletop frame pieces a little long so I have a little wiggle room when I'm cutting the miters. I'm going to cut a miter on one side of all 4 of the tabletop frame pieces, and then when I cut the 45-degree miter on the other side of each piece, that's when I'll cut those pieces to their exact lengths. Now that I have all my tabletop frame pieces cut, I'll glue and clamp them all together. I'll be using these 8-inch 90-degree clamp squares. It just makes the glue up go a lot smoother and ensures that every piece is at 90 degrees. After clamping the pieces together, I'll recess 2 screws into each long frame piece. Then I'll hide those screws with dowels that are 3/8 of an inch. Next, I'm recessing some 2.5-inch pocket hole screws to attach the tabletop frame to the tabletop. Okay, it is time for me to cut this tabletop support piece to size, and I'll secure it to the tabletop frame using recessed 2.5-inch construction screws. I'll secure this exactly in the middle of my tabletop, and I'll hide the screws on both ends with some 3/8-inch dowels. This workbench was just too cool not to make plans for, so I created written and video plans, and if you want to check them out, just click the link in the description, and I really do pride myself in the quality of my plans. To make the notches in these lower leg support pieces, I'm using my table saw and just my regular blade. I'll make multiple passes until I have a notch that's 1 5/8 deep and 1.5 wide. You'll see what this notch is for later in the build, but it's for the lower support stretcher. The long additional leg piece does not need to be flush with the top of the leg when you glue it up, because you'll be cutting that flush when the glue dries. Then I'm cutting all the legs to their final length on the miter saw using a stop block so that each leg can be the exact same length. Then I'll drill my hole near the top of each leg piece, and this hole is where the screw is going to go into. Then I'm rounding the top of each leg piece, and this will allow the legs to fold up and out when complete. Next, I'm drilling a hole 3/8 of an inch into the side of the tabletop frame, and I'll use each leg as a guide. Then I'll attach each leg with a bolt, 2 washers, and a nut. To attach the lower leg support pieces, those are the pieces with the slot cut out of them, I'm going to use glue and some screws. I'll recess those screws and then I'll hide them with dowels. The upper leg support piece, the piece without the notch cut out, will be attached using glue and recessed screws. I'll also hide those screws with dowels. This piece is important because it's going to act as a stopper to make sure the legs are at exactly 90 degrees. I'm cutting a notch out of both ends of this stretcher that is 1 5/8 inches by 1.5 inches. But remember, don't just go off of these measurements. Measure how big the notches need to be exactly based on the workbench that you've just built. I'm using hardwood edge banding to cover the plywood edges on my tabletop because it'll make my workbench look just a little bit nicer. I'm using 4/4 alder, which is actually 3/4 of an inch, and I'm cutting 1/4 inch strips using glue and a lot of tape to adhere it to the edges of the tabletop, and then cutting off the excess with my router and a flush trim bit. Okay, I'm getting ready to cut the wall mounts for the workbench. I'm cutting the top and bottom pieces to their final dimensions using the table saw and the miter saw. Then I'm making some marks on the bottom piece so I know exactly where to drill the holes when I attach it into the studs on the wall. For the bottom piece, I'm cutting a notch along the entire length of it that will be 13/16 of an inch by 1/4 inch. I'm using my regular blade for this and I'm not messing with the dado stack just because it'll be a little quicker if I keep my regular blade in there. Perfect. Okay. Woo! Success.